The Prophet's Warning. Admiral Kira Valencia stood before the Galactic Council, her weathered hands gripping the podium as she faced the assembled representatives of the most powerful civilizations in known space. After 30 years serving as humanity's ambassador to the stars, she knew this moment would define not just her career, but the fate of her species. Distinguished members of the council, she began, her voice steady despite the tension in the chamber, I come before you today with grave concerns about the Zaxxon Empire's planned military action against Earth. The chamber erupted in murmurs. At the head of the assembly, High Counselor Nexus of the Zaxxon Empire rose from his crystalline throne, his iridescent scales shifting colors in the artificial light. The human dares to question our sovereign right to expand? His voice carried the characteristic harmonic overtones of his species, but there was no missing the contempt in his words. I dare to warn you, Valencia replied, her dark eyes meeting his compound ones without flinching. Humanity is not what you think we are. We are not simply another primitive species to be conquered and absorbed into your empire. Laughter rippled through the chamber, particularly from the Zaxxon delegation. Nexus's mandibles clicked in amusement. Your species barely managed spaceflight a century ago. Your weapons are primitive, your ships are slow, and your defenses are negligible. You cannot hope to stand against the might of the Zaxxon armada. Valencia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction several times over. Each time, we've emerged stronger. Do you know why? She paused, scanning the chamber. Because humanity doesn't just adapt, we thrive on adversity. Enough of this posturing, Nexus interrupted. The decision has been made. Earth's strategic position and resources make it a necessary addition to our empire. Your warning has been noted, Ambassador, but it changes nothing. As Valencia left the chamber, her aide, Thomas Kumar, fell into step beside her. They're really going to do it, aren't they? He asked, his voice low. Yes, Valencia replied, watching the distant stars through the station's panoramic windows. And they have no idea what they're about to unleash. 3 weeks later, the Zaxxon invasion fleet appeared in Earth's orbit. Massive ships, each the size of a small city, blocked out the sun over major population centers. Their first strike targeted military installations, communication networks, and power grids. Millions died in the initial assault. But what happened next shocked the Zaxxon High Command. Instead of surrendering, humanity scattered and reorganized with devastating efficiency. Underground resistance networks formed within days. Military remnants merged with civilian tech companies to analyze Zaxxon technology. Universities transformed into fortresses of innovation, working around the clock to understand and counter alien weaponry. Valencia watched it all unfold from the neutral territory of Europa Station, where she had been permitted to remain as a diplomatic courtesy. Each day brought new reports of human adaptation and innovation. In Mumbai, engineers had already reverse-engineered portions of a downed Zaxxon fighter. In Lagos, scientists had identified weaknesses in Zaxxon battle armor. In Santiago, a teenage hacker had cracked their basic communication protocols. They expected us to break, Kumar observed, reviewing the latest reports. They thought we'd be like the other species they've conquered, that we'd accept their technological superiority and submit. Valencia nodded, remembering conversations from her years of diplomatic service. The Zaxxons believe in absolute hierarchies. Their entire empire is built on the principle that advanced technology equals the right to rule. They cannot comprehend a species that refuses to accept that hierarchy. And now? Now they're learning. Valencia pulled up a holographic display showing global resistance activities. Look at this pattern. Every time they develop a new tactic, we counter it within days. When they adapt, we adapt faster. They're fighting according to their military doctrine, we're fighting with everything we have, breaking every rule they thought they understood about warfare. The display showed a recent battle in the ruins of Berlin. A Zaxxon mechanized division had been completely destroyed by a combination of primitive explosives and hijacked Zaxxon tech. The resistance fighters had used the rubble-strewn city to their advantage, turning the urban landscape into a deadly maze that negated the aliens' technological superiority. "We're not just fighting for survival," Valencia continued, her voice soft but intense. "We're fighting for our right to exist as we are. The Zaxxons want to remake us in their image, to force us into their hierarchy. But humanity has never accepted such limitations." A priority alert flashed across their screens. The Resistance had just captured a Zaxxon forward command post in the Ural Mountains. The facility contained a wealth of tactical data and, more importantly, working examples of their most advanced weapon systems. "Send word to our contacts in the Council," Valencia ordered. "Tell them to watch closely what happens next." The Zaxxons thought they were starting a conquest. She paused, allowing herself a grim smile. "Instead, they've started a revolution." As if to emphasize her words, another alert appeared. Resistance forces had just successfully tested a countermeasure to Zaxxon energy shields. The innovation had come from an unlikely collaboration between a quantum physicist and a video game designer in Seoul. The tide was turning, just as Valencia had warned it would. Humanity wasn't just fighting back, they were rewriting the rules of galactic warfare. And in doing so, they were proving what she had tried to tell the Council, that the true strength of humanity lay not in their technology or their weapons, but in their unlimited capacity to adapt, innovate, and overcome. The Zaxxon Empire was about to learn a costly lesson, one that would reshape the balance of power throughout known space. They had sought to conquer a primitive species, but instead, they had awakened a force they never truly understood: human determination. Adaptation and resistance. Dr. Maya Patel wiped the sweat from her forehead as she studied the holographic display before her. The underground laboratory in the ruins of Singapore hummed with activity, even at this late hour. 3 months into the Zaxxon invasion, humanity had learned to operate around the clock, making use of every precious second. "Run the simulation again," she ordered, her fingers dancing across the haptic interface. Behind her, Dr. David Okoro nodded, inputting the new parameters. They had been working on this project for weeks, analyzing the peculiar way Zaxxon energy weapons interacted with Earth's atmosphere. "Something's not right," David muttered, his Nigerian accent thickened by exhaustion. "Look at these energy signatures. They're not just plasma-based weapons. There's something else." Maya zoomed in on the data stream, her eyes widening. "Quantum entanglement. They're using quantum-paired particles to stabilize the plasma stream. That's why our conventional shields have been useless." A distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling. The Zaxxons were bombing the city again, searching for resistant strongholds. But they wouldn't find this facility, buried deep beneath the ruins of the old Quantum Research Center. "If we can disrupt the entanglement," Maya continued, her mind racing, "we could destabilize their entire weapons system." "David, remember that paper you wrote about quantum decoherence in variable gravity fields?" David's tired eyes suddenly lit up. "The Henderson-Okoro effect." "Yes. If we generate a localized gravity distortion." He was already typing furiously, modifying the simulation. The holographic display flickered, showing a new set of calculations. Both scientists leaned forward, watching as the simulated Zaxxon weapon fired, and failed spectacularly. "We need to get this to the Resistance immediately," Maya said, already packaging the data. But before she could finish, another explosion rocked the facility, this one much closer. "They found us," David said grimly, moving to the backup terminals to begin data purging protocols. "Maya, get that data out. I'll hold them off." She wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The facility's security systems were already engaging, and she could hear weapons fire in the upper levels. Maya grabbed the quantum data core and headed for the emergency tunnel, leaving her friend and colleague behind. Thousands of kilometers away, in the frozen wastes of northern Russia, Commander Elena Volkov received Maya's transmission. The underground resistance base, carved into the permafrost, had become one of humanity's primary coordination centers. "Get this to our tech teams immediately," she ordered, studying the data. "And contact all major resistance cells. If this works, we'll need to coordinate our counterattack carefully." Her second-in-command, Captain Jean Chen, was already mobilizing their communications team. In the months since the invasion, they had developed a sophisticated network using a combination of old shortwave radio technology and repurposed Zaxxon quantum comm systems. "What about the Singapore facility?" Jean asked, his face grim. Elena closed her eyes briefly. "Send an extraction team Delta. But their primary objective remains the same, recover any research data. We can't afford to lose the work they were doing there." The resistance had learned harsh lessons about prioritizing the greater good over individual lives. Every piece of research, every scrap of intelligence about Zaxxon technology, could mean the difference between humanity's survival and extinction. As if to emphasize this point, new reports began flooding in. The Zaxxons had launched a major offensive in South America, pushing through the Amazon defense line that had held them at bay for weeks. But even as they advanced, humanity continued to adapt. Guerrilla forces in Brazil had discovered that the dense rainforest canopy interfered with Zaxxon targeting systems. In the Andes, resistance fighters used the high altitude to their advantage, finding blind spots in Zaxxon sensor arrays. Each small victory, each new piece of intelligence, was shared globally through the resistance network. "Commander," Jean called out, his voice urgent. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Dr. Patel. She made it out of Singapore with critical data. But there's more. She says they weren't just working on weapons analysis. They found something in the Zaxxon command protocols, a vulnerability in their neural network." Elena moved quickly to the communication station. Maya's face appeared on the screen, exhausted but determined. "The Zaxxons use a hierarchical command structure," she explained without preamble. "But it's more than just military doctrine, it's hardwired into their technology. Their entire command and control system is based on absolute adherence to authority." "How does this help us?" Elena asked, though she was beginning to see the implications. "Because humans don't think that way," Maya replied, a fierce light in her eyes. "We can use their own systems against them, but in ways they never imagined. Ways their hierarchical minds can't anticipate or counter." Elena felt a smile spreading across her face, the first real smile in weeks. "Get to our facility in Kazakhstan," she ordered. "We'll have a team of our best hackers waiting. It's time we showed the Zaxxons why assuming we're primitive was their biggest mistake." As Maya's transmission ended, Elena turned to the command center's main display. It showed the current state of the war, red for Zaxxon-controlled territory, blue for confirmed human-resistant strongholds, and vast swathes of yellow representing contested areas. The red still dominated, but that was about to change. "Send word to all commands," she ordered. "Operation Prometheus is now in effect. We've been gathering intelligence, learning their weaknesses, adapting to their strategies. Now it's time to show them what humanity can really do." Around the world, resistance cells began mobilizing. In laboratories, factories, and hidden bases, humans prepared to demonstrate why they had survived countless near-extinction events throughout their history. The Zaxxons had superior technology and overwhelming force, but humanity had something they couldn't comprehend: the ability to think beyond hierarchies, to innovate beyond boundaries, and to fight beyond the limits of what their enemies believed possible. The real war was about to begin. Operation Prometheus began not with a bang, but with silence. Across Earth's occupied territories, Zaxxon communication networks suddenly went dark. In their orbital fleet, ship commanders found themselves cut off from the hierarchical command structure that governed their every action. For the first time in their military history, the Zaxxon forces faced complete chaos. "Neural network disruption successful," Jean Chen reported from the Kazakhstan command center. Around him, teams of hackers worked furiously, implementing the attack protocols developed from Dr. Patel's research. Their entire command structure is fragmenting. Maya Patel nodded, her fingers flying across multiple interfaces. They're trying to adapt, but their minds can't handle independent action. Their entire society is built on receiving orders from above. Without that hierarchy. She didn't need to finish the thought. On the main display, they could see Zaxxon forces falling into disarray. Ships hung motionless in orbit, their crews awaiting instructions that would never come. Ground forces retreated to defensive positions, unable to coordinate or respond to rapidly changing situations. Commander Elena Volkov's voice crackled over the comm system. All resistance cells, execute Phase 2. I repeat, Phase 2 is now active. Around the globe, humanity launched its counterattack. In North America, specially modified EMP devices, based on reverse-engineered Zaxxon technology, disabled entire divisions of their mechanized infantry. In Europe, resistance fighters used the quantum disruption field developed by Maya and David to turn the aliens' energy weapons against them. But the true masterstroke came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Aisha Rahman, a former video game developer from Pakistan, had discovered a way to tap into the Zaxxon's neural interface systems. Her team created what she called chaos protocols, commands that made perfect sense to human minds but created logical paradoxes in the hierarchical Zaxxon thought structure. It's like giving them a Zen koan, Aisha explained as she launched another wave of attacks. Their minds try to process it according to their rigid hierarchy, but they can't. It creates a feedback loop in their neural networks. The effects were devastating. Entire Zaxxon battle groups found themselves paralyzed by commands that simultaneously ordered them to advance and hold position, to attack and defend, to obey and question. Their rigid minds, unable to handle such contradictions, simply shut down. In orbit, humanity's first space-based offensive began. Captain Michael Torres led a fleet of captured and modified Zaxxon vessels, crewed by pilots who had trained in secret for months. They moved in ways the Zaxxon commanders couldn't predict, using human intuition and creativity to turn the aliens' own ships against them. They expect us to fight according to their rulebook, Torres transmitted as his fleet engaged the enemy. But humanity wrote our own rules a long time ago. The battle for Earth's orbit lasted 3 days. When it ended, half the Zaxxon fleet had been destroyed or captured. The rest retreated to the outer solar system, their commanders unable to comprehend how their superior technology had failed against such primitive tactics. But victory came at a cost. The resistance lost thousands of fighters in the offensive. The Kazakhstan command center itself came under heavy attack, forcing an evacuation just as they were implementing the final stages of the neural disruption. We can't let them recover from this, Elena insisted during the emergency council meeting. They had relocated to a backup facility deep beneath the Antarctic ice. If we give them time to adapt, to modify their neural networks. They won't adapt, Maya interrupted, her voice confident despite her exhaustion. That's what you're not seeing, Commander. The Zaxxons can't adapt, not to this. Their entire civilization is built on hierarchical certainty. We're not just fighting their military, we're challenging their entire worldview. The evidence supported her assertion. Intercepted communications from the Zaxxon High Command showed growing confusion and fear. Their reports tried to explain their defeats in terms their superiors could understand, but how could they explain being outwitted by primitives? How could they justify losing battles to a species that refused to fight according to established galactic protocols? We've got another problem, Jean reported, entering the council chamber. Our deep space sensors are picking up multiple signatures. The Zaxxons have called for reinforcements. The room fell silent. They had achieved incredible victories, but Earth's forces were exhausted. They had expended much of their captured technology in the orbital battle, and their resources were stretched thin. But then Aisha spoke up, a gleam in her eye. Let them come, she said, pulling up a holographic display of her latest work. I've been analyzing their neural network protocols. The more Zaxxons we face, the more powerful our chaos protocols become. Their hierarchical system is like a computer network. The more nodes you add, the faster our logical paradoxes spread. Elena studied the data, a slow smile spreading across her face. They think they're sending reinforcements, she said, but they're actually giving us more weapons to use against them. The council chamber erupted in activity as new plans were formed. Humanity had survived the initial invasion, adapted to alien technology, and launched a successful counterattack. Now they would prepare for the next phase, taking the fight beyond Earth. As the leaders planned, Maya found a quiet moment to send a message to David's family in Nigeria. Her colleagues' sacrifice in Singapore had made their victories possible, and she swore it wouldn't be in vain. The Zaxxons had started this war believing they were superior beings subjugating primitives. Instead, they had awakened humanity's greatest strength, the power to unite, adapt, and overcome any challenge. The next phase would show them just how costly that mistake would be. The Zaxxon reinforcement fleet arrived in waves, thousands of ships strong, their crystalline hulls glittering in the light of Earth's sun. They expected to find a battered human resistance, weakened by months of warfare. Instead, they found a trap. Chaos protocols deployed, Lieutenant Aisha Rahman announced from the bridge of the captured dreadnought Starcutter. Neural disruption spreading through their command network, now. The effect was immediate and devastating. The rigid hierarchy of the Zaxxon fleet, already strained by their earlier defeats, shattered completely. Ships began moving erratically, their crews caught in endless loops of contradictory commands. Captain Michael Torres watched from his flagship, the renamed Freedom's Edge. "Begin Phase 1 of Operation Exodus," he ordered. "All ships, execute jump sequence." Humanity's counter-invasion force, comprised of captured and modified Zaxxon vessels, activated their quantum drives. The ships disappeared in flashes of blue light, leaving Earth's solar system for the first time in human history. Their destination, the heart of Zaxxon space. "We're receiving reports from our advanced scouts," Maya Patel reported from the tactical center. She had insisted on joining the offensive, arguing that they needed her expertise in Zaxxon technology on the front lines. "The chaos protocols are spreading faster than we anticipated. Entire sectors of Zaxxon space are in disarray." The human fleet emerged from quantum space near Centauri Prime, the Zaxxon's most important military shipyard. The facility was massive, a sprawling complex of construction docks and defense platforms. Under normal circumstances, it would have been impregnable. But these weren't normal circumstances. "Their defense grid is compromised," Jean Chen reported, his hands dancing across the tactical interface. "The chaos protocols have infected their central command system. Their weapons are active, but they can't coordinate their fire." Torres nodded grimly. "Launch the Fireflies." Swarms of small craft emerged from the human ships. They were the brainchild of Dr. Andrea Reyes, a brilliant engineer who had combined Zaxxon quantum technology with traditional human drone designs. The Fireflies moved in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine, their flight patterns based on the complex dances of Earth insects. The Zaxxon defenders, their minds locked into rigid tactical patterns, couldn't adapt to this new threat. The Fireflies slipped through their defensive screen, attaching themselves to key structures throughout the shipyard. Each carried a payload of quantum disruption charges, designed to target the crystalline technology at the heart of Zaxxon engineering. Detonation in 3, 2, 1. Andrea counted down from her station on Freedom's Edge. The shipyard erupted in a cascade of quantum reactions. Construction docks collapsed, defense platforms went dark, and half-built warships crumbled into space debris. Humanity's first strike against Zaxxon infrastructure had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. But they weren't finished. "All ships, prepare for Phase 2, Torres ordered. "Lieutenant Rahman, begin broadcasting the Liberation Protocol." Aisha's latest creation was more subtle than the Chaos Protocols, but potentially more devastating. Instead of creating logical paradoxes, it introduced something entirely alien to Zaxxon society, the concept of individual choice. Message is broadcasting on all frequencies, she confirmed. Translating into their neural network protocols now. Throughout Zaxxon space, a simple question began spreading through their communication networks: what if you could choose your own path? For a species built entirely around rigid hierarchy and absolute obedience, it was like a virus attacking the foundations of their society. Lower-ranked Zaxxons began questioning orders. Ship crews started making independent decisions. The entire social structure that had maintained their empire for millennia began to crack. "We're receiving responses," Maya reported, her eyes wide. "Some of the Zaxxon ships, they're standing down. Their crews are requesting dialogue." Elena Volkov's voice came through the command channel from Earth. "Remember, we're not here for conquest. Offer protection to any Zaxxon who chooses to break from their hierarchy. Show them there's another way to live." The human fleet pressed deeper into Zaxxon space, not as conquerors but as liberators. Each sector they entered brought new challenges, but also new allies. Some Zaxxon ships joined their cause, their crews awakening to the possibility of freedom for the first time in their species' history. But the Empire's leadership wouldn't go quietly. High Commander Nexus, the same leader who had dismissed Valencia's warnings months ago, gathered his loyal forces for a final stand at their capital world. "They're deploying something new," Jean reported, studying the sensor readings. "Energy signatures we haven't seen before. They've been holding back their most advanced weapons." Torres shared a look with Maya. "They're desperate," she said. "They're watching everything they believed in fall apart. We need to be ready for anything." As if in response to her words, massive energy readings began building up around the Zaxxon capital fleet. They were preparing to unleash weapons that could potentially destroy both sides. They'd rather see their own civilization burn than admit their way isn't the only way, Torres realized. "All ships, battle stations. Lieutenant Rahman, prepare to broadcast the final protocol. Dr. Patel, coordinate with the allied Zaxxon ships. This ends today." The battle for the future of both species was about to begin, and its outcome would reshape the galaxy forever. The Zaxxon capital world of Crystallos hung in space like a jewel, its crystalline cities reflecting the light of 3 suns. Around it, 2 fleets faced each other in a standoff that would determine the fate of both species. On one side, High Commander Nexus had gathered the remaining loyal forces of the Zaxxon Empire. On the other, the combined fleet of humanity and their liberated Zaxxon allies prepared for the final battle. "Energy readings from their flagship are off the scale," Maya Patel reported from her station on Freedom's Edge. "They're charging something massive, like nothing we've seen before." Captain Torres studied the tactical display, his expression grim. "They've developed some kind of quantum cascade weapon. If that thing goes off, it'll tear apart the fabric of spacetime in this entire sector. They would destroy their own capital." Jean Chen asked, though he already knew the answer. The Zaxxon leadership had demonstrated they would go to any lengths to maintain their control. "Incoming transmission," Lieutenant Rahman announced. "It's High Commander Nexus." The alien leader's image appeared on their main screen, his crystalline features distorted with what might have been rage, or fear. "You have corrupted our perfect order," he began, his harmonic voice crackling with emotion. "You have infected our people with your chaos, your individualism. We will not allow this contamination to spread further." "Your people are choosing freedom," Torres replied calmly. "They're choosing to think for themselves. That's not corruption, it's evolution." "Evolution?" Nexus laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You primitives think you understand evolution. We have guided the development of 1,000 species. We have maintained order in this galaxy for millennia. And we will not be undone by creatures who barely understand the technology they're using." The energy readings from his flagship spiked dramatically. The quantum cascade weapon was nearly charged. But humanity had one final card to play. Now, Aisha, Torres ordered. Lieutenant Ramon activated her masterpiece, what she called the ultimate chaos protocol. It was different from anything they had used before, not attacking the Zaxxon hierarchy but rather offering a simple truth, a memory. Through every neural network, every quantum communication channel, every linked mind in the Zaxxon fleet, spread an image, Earth, as seen from space, beautiful and resilient despite months of war. Along with it came the collected memories of human history, not just their victories, but their failures, their struggles, their endless drive to improve and overcome. What is this? Nexus demanded, his image flickering as the protocol spread through his neural links. This is humanity, Maya replied, standing beside Torres. Not just who we are now, but everything we've been through to get here. Every mistake, every lesson, every time we've fallen and gotten back up. We're showing you what you never understood about us. The effect on the Zaxxon fleet was immediate and profound. Ships began powering down their weapons. The quantum cascade weapon's energy signature fluctuated and died. Even Nexus's image showed signs of the protocol's impact, his crystalline features shifting as new understanding fought with old certainties. You could have surrendered, he said finally, his voice different now, less harmonic, more individual. When we first attacked, you could have accepted your place in the hierarchy. Why didn't you? Because that's not who we are, Torres answered. Humanity doesn't accept limitations. We don't bow to hierarchies. We adapt, we innovate, we overcome. And now your people are learning to do the same. The battle that everyone had expected never happened. Instead, something unprecedented occurred, the Zaxxon Empire began to transform. Ships declared their independence from the hierarchy. Crystalline cities on the surface below lit up with new colors as their inhabitants experienced individual thought for the first time. High Commander Nexus, the last defender of the old order, looked out at the combined fleet before him, human ships flying alongside liberated Zaxxon vessels, former enemies working together in ways his rigid mind had never imagined possible. We feared you, he admitted, his voice carrying a new tone, something like wonder. Not because you were primitive, but because somehow, deep down, we knew what you could teach us. We knew you could show us another way to exist. Admiral Kira Valencia's words from months ago echoed in Torres's mind, humanity is not what you think we are. She had been right, but not even she had imagined how profound the change would be. In the days that followed, a new galactic order began to emerge. The Zaxxon Empire transformed into a federation of independent worlds, each finding its own balance between order and freedom. Humanity, far from being conquered, had become a teacher and guide to a species learning to think in new ways. Maya Patel established the first joint human Zaxxon Research Institute, dedicated to combining the best aspects of both species' technology and philosophy. Aisha Ramon's chaos protocols evolved into teaching tools, helping young Zaxxons develop individual thought while maintaining their species' natural gifts for coordination and unity. And on Earth, as the reconstruction began, Admiral Valencia stood once again before the Galactic Council. But this time, she wasn't there to warn them. She was there to invite them to learn from humanity's example, to show them that true strength comes not from imposing order, but from embracing change and adaptation. The war that had begun as an attempt to conquer humanity had instead revolutionized the galaxy. The Zaxxons had sought to teach humanity its place in their hierarchy. Instead, they had learned perhaps the most important lesson of all, that the species they had dismissed as primitive possessed something far more valuable than advanced technology, the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to be bound by anyone's limitations but their own. And throughout known space, a new saying began to spread among spacefaring species: beware the humans, not for their weapons or their technology, but for their power to make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself.